Hello, this is Matthew Heck, and today I will be presenting to you the first part of Chapter 11, which is about data analytics. So, before we get started, let's go ahead and define what data analytics are. According to the textbook, the term data analytics refers broadly to the processing of data to infer patterns, correlations, or models for predictions. And these results of the data analytics can be used to guide decisions. Why are data analytics so important? It's a bit of a buzzword today in business, analytics, and it's something that is really being focused on. And that's because they can offer businesses a lot of benefits. They can help them to make good decisions, and in effect, that also prevents them from making bad decisions. And it all comes back to money. That's the most important thing for businesses, is making money. And when they're making the right decisions and they're not making bad decisions, they're saving money and they're using their resources well. So it's very important for businesses, and that's why data analytics are so important today. So to give a little bit more of an overview to what data analytics are, basically the idea is that reports are generated to summarize data in a more meaningful way than just the data itself. The reports will make it so that they're easier to understand. Many times they're shown graphically, so it's easier to get a grasp on what the data is saying and to make inferences off that. So these report uses are to help businesses understand patterns, to give insight into business processes, and also just to help make decisions, which I've already gone over a little bit. So these large businesses are going to generate a massive amount of data from all their different processes, and it's important for them to use that data well, as we already talked about making the right decisions, and all that goes into using this data that they have as best they can. So one of the ways that this data is stored is in a data warehouse. And what a data warehouse is when data from a bunch of different sources is all stored in one location. And this data warehouse will have a unified schema, which will help with efficient analysis and will give uniform interface to the data. So basically all the information is going to be taken from these different sources. It's going to be different types of information, but it's going to be converted to fit into one sort of schema, which will make analysis of that data more efficient and will make it uniform to access that data for the users. That is this idea of ETL, which is extract, transform, and load, which is basically the process of collecting data, cleaning and deduplicating the data, and then loading that data into the warehouse. So you get the data from all the sources as shown in this picture here, and it goes to the ETL and then right into the warehouse where it's all uniform and easy to access. So these data warehouses, the databases that they use for these are a lot different than just your normal transaction processing database. Your normal transaction processing database will be focused on being able to do a bunch of different small queries, but the main focus of these databases for the data warehouses is not to be able to do a bunch of different small queries. Its focus is on being able to query a large amount of data. So that's the main focus of these databases for these data warehouses. In addition, a difference between your normal database and these data warehouses are that the records in data warehouses aren't typically updated. When they're no longer valid, they're deleted. So that affords for no overhead concurrency control. They don't need to have any sort of concurrency control when the records aren't updated. Most databases that do need concurrency control, there's a lot of overhead that goes into that. Many times having separate databases carrying redundant data so that files can be read and written at the same time without having to worry about that. But for data warehouses, they don't have to worry about that because they aren't ever going to update data. So data lakes are a bit different than data warehouses. That's another way that businesses will store data, it provides different benefits. So data lakes are a repository where data can be stored in multiple formats. There's no unified schema that the data is put into. So they don't have the cost of creating a common schema, and they don't require the data to be pre-processed. So that's the benefit of these data lakes. But at the same time, they do require more effort when creating queries and when trying to create reports from this data. So the querying tools must also be flexible. So those are kind of the pros and cons of the data lake, and you can see how it differs from the data warehouse. So that's it for this first part of the chapter, and you can look at the next video to see the next part of the chapter.